Welcome to the Becoming Superhuman podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to bring you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
Before we get started, I want to ask you, what would it mean for you to be able to double or even triple your memory and ability to learn? So many people tell us that this skill would be absolutely life-changing for them, but they just don't have the time. They just don't have the time. So that's why we have developed, my team and I, a 5-day memory mastery crash course where we go into all the fundamental neuroscience and the actual techniques that are used by the world's best memory athletes and world record holders. It's a course that we value at $97, but here's the thing. We are actually giving this course away completely for free. All you have to do to enroll in the course is visit jle.vi/5. That's jle.vi/5. Greetings, super friends, and welcome to this week's episode, which is lovingly provided to you thanks to a wonderful review from Sabi Ra of the United States of America, who says, "So worth it, 5 stars, and a heart emoji. Was just tuned in doing some routine tasks, but want to pick up a pad and pen and re-listen. Great guests." That's all it takes, guys, to leave an incredible review that makes our whole team smile. So if you haven't done it, please do what Sabira did and leave us a short review because we so appreciate it. On to today's guest. Today, we are joined by Lucia Giovannini, which is a very Italian name and a wonderful conversation. Lucia is a former Italian supermodel turned best-selling author, spiritual teacher, transformational coach, environmental and animal activist. Her best-selling book, A Whole New Life, published by Hay House India, sold thousands and thousands of copies around the world and was translated into 8 languages. And now it will be premiering in the US in March of 2019. So I sat down with Lucia to talk a little bit about mindset, a little bit about setting goals and how we achieve our goals, but also just to learn what are the skills that she took away from a highly successful career in modeling and how did she transfer those forward. I think you'll get some useful reminders and some interesting new perspectives in this episode. So it is my great pleasure to introduce you to my new super friend, Lucia Giovannini. Lucia, welcome. How are you doing?
Fine, Jonathan, and thank you for inviting me in this wonderful podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And it's always nice to get someone on this side of the Atlantic so that we can record a little bit earlier than I'm used to recording.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, Lucia, we started talking a little bit before the recording and I stopped you because I wanted to get as much of your story as possible for our listeners to hear. So I guess I'll just ask, who are you and what do you do and what's your passion and why were you put on this earth? You know, small questions to start out with.
Yeah, just to start with, I wonder what will be the other questions. So my passion, let's start with my passion. My passion is about helping people find their mission, helping people find themselves again. And it's like in the last 24 years, I've been mainly teaching in workshops, retreats, writing books, and I used to do also one-on-one coaching sessions, which I don't do anymore because I don't have time to do everything, so I choose to let go of that. And so, yeah, my main topic is change. So how to create change, how to face unwanted change in life and how to direct our lives so that we can achieve our goals. But again, the idea of our goals, it's more about our true goals because there are so many, fake goals or bullshit goals or goals that other people impose on us that, some people or many people actually chase, and those are not, bringing us any happiness. So the idea is really to be able to listen to our soul, to our mission, and realize that and self-actualize, in other words.
Absolutely. And you have perhaps one of the most interesting background stories. I was looking through the bio. You have a very interesting background story that I haven't seen in the 200 plus guests that I've interviewed. Tell me a little bit about how you got on this path.
Yeah, well, I was a model. I was a fashion model for a long time, actually. And so it was a big change, big shift in my life. And I spent a big part of my childhood in Africa, even if I'm Italian and my two parents are both Italian. But my father used to live in Africa. And so since when I was a kid, I was exposed both to the beauty of nature and strength of nature in Africa and the beautiful sunsets and all of that, but also to the suffering, like poor people, animal dying. And so I think that it was at those times that I developed this mission, I call it, because I don't know which other term to use, to do my best to end suffering, or at least to diminish suffering. But then when I grew up, when I was like in my teenagers and so on, I totally forgot that promise that I made to myself. And by coincidence, I started modeling. By coincidence, because it was not planned. I just accompanied a friend of mine who went to a casting and they chose me. And so I said, well, they pay some good money, so why not? And it was the start of a very long career. And apparently, I had it all because I had a very good career in modeling. I was married to a model himself, and all my friends were either models or fashion artists and so on and so forth. And that went on for many years until I realized I was not happy. Yeah, because I felt I was, dying inside. And it was difficult because I had it all, as I said. So I talk to people, but are you happy? Because I'm not. I think my life doesn't have a real meaning. And they looked at me and said, oh, you need to go to psychology, to go and have a chat with a psychologist. Some of them said, you need to go to a psychiatrist, And so it was difficult. And also I felt like there's something wrong with me. Why can't I just be happy like other people? And I think it was the voice of my soul that was, emerging, the voice of, of my promise to myself, the promise that I made when I was a kid. And so, to make a long story short, I decided to give it all up. I decided to just follow my heart, and my heart was saying, do your work, meaning, I had studied psychology prior to that, but I didn't put that into practice because, and so my heart led me to keep on, doing trainings and being certified in several methods and start doing retreats and workshops and sessions. But the thing is that in Italy at those times, nobody knew that kind of things. So when I spoke to my friends in the fashion industry and they asked me, oh, but okay, I get you're not happy anymore. You want to leave. You want to create a new career. But what are you going to do? And I used to say, yeah, I will be a coach. And they said, oh, are you going to work in a gym? And they couldn't grasp it. So it was difficult for me to think I'll be able, to survive, even financially, doing this job and just abandoning all that I've created. But in the end, I made the jump. And of course, I'm very happy I made it.
And the rest is history. I want to ask, because I think it's very interesting, people who come at coaching or writing or anything really from a very different perspective. And we had someone recently on the show who spent 14 years in prison. And I asked him, I said, how do you think that experience, his name was Andre Norman, how do you think that experience groomed you as a person, but also to help others? And so I want to ask the same question to you, Lucia, which is, was this modeling career a complete kind of diversion, or did it move you forward towards your goal? And what are the things that you learned as a model that you're still using today?
Yeah, I think, well, at the beginning, I thought it was a complete diversion. It took me some time to reveal that I was a model in the personal, when I was actually teaching or giving workshop, I would hide that part of me.
Wow.
So never wear makeup, try to be dressed as ugly as possible because I didn't want, that part to come out and people think, oh, an ex-model, what can she teach us? And so, it took me some time to make peace with that past and with that part of myself. And actually, I realized it was not a diversion at all. In a way, it prepared me because I traveled the world as a model. And so I'm still traveling the world now, just in a different setting. But, so I'm used to talking to people. As a model, I would meet a lot of people. And then it's also true that I can see now that I was working on external beauty back then, and now I'm working on inner beauty. And I think that true external beauty comes from the inside. So it's like, now I'm working on a missing link, but the two things are very connected in some way. And also I'm working in my workshops, I'm working with lots of women who fall prey to, the conditioning of our society in terms of body shape and all of that, appearances and all of that. So having my past as a model, I think I can understand a little better, where all this comes from, where all this conditioning comes from. Just to give you an idea, lots of women compare themselves to the pictures of women who are in the magazines. But of course, I know that all those pictures are photoshopped. So actually, they are comparing to nothing, to a false image. So, those kind of things. So, I think it was a preparation.
It's funny because I thought you would have talked about the discipline that it takes to become a model and the drive, the tenacity, the mindset. But I think it's interesting that, the first thing you brought up was really the exposure to cultures and knowing people.
Yeah, well, I'm a people's person, And it's true. It's also about discipline. It's true. I give discipline it's like something for granted for me, Of course you need discipline, but I like discipline. So it has never been difficult for me to be disciplined in a way. As a model, when I had to wake up very early for a photo shoot, of course, the night before I would have to go to bed early and follow a certain diet, etc., etc. But when you love what you're doing, or even at the end, because at the beginning I actually loved modeling, of course, but after a few years, it was, as I said, it was like I couldn't stand it anymore, but it became more and more difficult for me. But I knew I had to do it because I was choosing to do it. So discipline was something like for granted. Of course, you have to follow a discipline. Yeah.
So tell me about that transition. What were your first clients like? How did you make that transition? Because I think a lot of people in the audience, I hope not many people in the audience, but I think there are some people in the audience who are saying, you know what? I don't really like the career path that I went down either. And how do I make a change?
Well, I started asking myself a question that I think few people ask themselves. And I think this question is a key to actually making the changes we want in our life. So normally the questions we ask when we are in doubt whether to jump, to leave our career and create a new one, we ask, what am I going to lose? What are the risks, in doing this? I'm going to lose my stability, my income, etc., and so on and so forth. But the question we never ask, and it's exactly the question I started asking myself, is what are the risks in not jumping? What are the risks in not changing? What is it costing for me to stay here, to keep on doing this job and not to follow my heart? And so the costs were very high, because if I thought, continuing like this for many years, it would have been like suffocating sensations, and like wasting my life probably.
Wow.
I think that when we create change, there are two parts, an inner creation and an external creation. Inner creation, something has to shift within ourselves. And that something also leads us to being more motivated and to actually then take the necessary steps. And then, of course, we need to act on the external, meaning do something, And so on the internal, that is the part of the creation I did, changing perception and focusing more on the risks on not jumping, not making the change. On the external part, meaning the steps I did, basically I started offering some workshops, some private sessions. But at the beginning, it was not that easy. I remember very clearly I was leaving for a retreat as a participant and not as a teacher. And at those times, there were no cellular phones. Cellular phones basically didn't exist yet. We are talking about last century, actually. So what we had were answering machines. So people wanted to call you and they could leave a message on the answering machine. And before leaving for the retreat, I had planned to have a workshop in the next month in my hometown. So I prepared all the nice leaflets with my phone number for the information and brought all the leaflets to all the brochures to the several bookstores and shops in my hometown. And then I was in the retreat and I asked God and I talked to God and I said, well, give me a sign, please. Give me a clear sign, if this change that I'm feeling I want to do, is it really something I have to do? Is it really good for my path or not? And so that same night, I listened to my answering machine and there are at least 10, 12 messages. And I go, well, good. And I listened to the messages. They were all requests for work. But for my work as a model, not even one interested in my workshop. So I said, my goodness, what is that? What kind of message is that? But then I decided to interpret it as a test from the universe. I could have interpreted it as you're not meant to do this, go down this path, but I decided to interpret it the other way. So it made me even more, tenacious.
Wow, I love that. I love that. And I love that kind of test that you had the audacity to be like, you know what, I'm going to give this another chance.
Yes, exactly.
So you've been doing this now for quite some time. Tell me about the work that you do with coaching clients. And you talked a lot about goal setting. And I would love to hear a little bit about your philosophy. I know you've written a best-selling book. So tell us a little bit about your philosophy of getting people where they want to go with coaching.
Yeah. Well, I've written 13 books, but
wow.
12 of them are in Italian. And a couple of them are in other languages also, but not in English. And one is also in English, which is A Whole New Life. And it will actually be published in the US in March. So my whole philosophy, starting with A Whole New Life, which is also the name of my method, is, as I said, about creating the changes we want. So, of course, when we need to create a change, when we want to create a change, or when we need to face a challenge in life, which brings about a change that maybe we didn't plan, so it's not wanted, but we need to learn to dance with it, to do something, with that change. For example, a breakup or an illness or losing a job. It's still a change. It's an unwanted change, but it's a change that we need to learn how to, face and how to make the best out of it. So we, in A Whole New Life, and in general in my workshops, we look at the different stages of change because, of course, we talk about change as if it were an object, but actually it's not. It's a process. So of course, we need to understand which is this process exactly. So we go from awareness, which is the base. So we do a lot of processes and exercises on awareness to become more aware of how, we are living our life, what we want to change, why, what, for example, is limiting this change or limiting our abilities to create that change. And then there is another step, which is motivation, because we may know what we want to change, but if we're not motivated enough, then it's like leaving for a trip and not having enough fuel in your car.
Of course.
Yeah. And then we may be motivated, but then we need actually to decide. And decide comes from Latin, which means reside, which means cut. We need to cut the old to make space for the new. And so there's a moment where we gained enough motivation, enough fuel, and we actually need to decide that we are going to change. And that is also a very important part. And then, as I mentioned before, when we have decided, we need to actually create the change. So there's an inner creation and an outer creation. The inner creation has to do with our limiting belief, dissolving our inner barriers, our limiting belief and all that. And outer creation has to do with action, new actions that we need to take in order to create the change. And once we've done that, there's the solidification part. Because sometimes we manage to create change, but then we are not able to solidify it. So we go back to old patterns of behavior, we go back to old patterns of thinking. And so the solidification part is very important. So this is all the parts that we cover, and we cover them through different, exercises and processes. And of course, also we talk about self-esteem, which is another very important ingredient to live a fully fulfilling life, the difference between self-esteem and self-efficacy, because self-esteem has nothing to do with, how many books I've written or how much money I have. That's self-efficacy. I can be efficient as a writer or not efficient as a parent, but it has nothing to do with the love for myself. So,
of course.
Yeah. So we talk about forgiveness, which enables us to let go of the past. So, yeah, we talk about trust. Again, trusting ourselves and trusting the universe. So we can go on walk in our life not contracted and open to possibilities, open to the universe. So basically, those are the main areas and the main moments of both the book and my workshops.
I love that. And from your experience, where do people get hung up? Because I think every single person in the audience, when they were listening, definitely identified a little bit of themselves. And I certainly understood that there was sense in what you were saying. Especially for me, it's, the motivation. It's very easy to set goals. It's very hard to follow through with them. But where do you think most people get stuck? Your average person that you've worked with?
Yeah, either the motivation, in any of these moments, actually, either motivation. There are lots of dreamers, okay? Lots of people who are dreamers, and it's nice to be a dreamer because everything starts from a dream. If you don't have a dream, then you don't have a goal. You don't do anything. But dreaming is not enough. And again, sometimes this, law of attraction and new age philosophy may have been misleading. Misleading, people think you just dream it and then it comes true, which, sometimes it may, but in my experience, you need to act on it.
Yes. I have a friend who loves to say the law of attraction only kicks in after you activate the law of action.
Exactly. In fact, in my book, A Whole New Life, I speak the law of attraction and the law of action together. Then we have, a complete process. So lots of people are stuck in the dreaming phase, and lots of people in the decision phase. Because, of course, you dream, you're motivated, but then it comes a moment where you have to jump. You have to say, okay, I decide, which means also I let go of the past. I let go of my old me in order to become my full me, self-actualized me. And so it also means letting go. Sometimes it means letting go of our old comfort zone, which is not easy. So I guess that these are the two parts where lots of people get stuck.
Right. Absolutely. So I want to ask you, Lucia, if we could give some homework for folks in the audience. I used to love to give homework, and recently I haven't, but I feel like you mentioned, that you have a lot of exercises that you do with coaching clients. Yeah. And I would love to have people do an exercise, whatever you think is fit, while they wait for next week's episode.
Well, one exercise that I love to give, and because I saw in many people, it was really a game changer, and it's very easy. It's an awareness exercise, because most of the time we spend our life running, our whole day. We start running in the morning, we end running in the evening, from one activity to another, from one appointment to another, without ever stopping to ask ourselves if where we are running to is the direction we really want to go. If where we are running to leads us to what we want in life, and even before leads us to being the person we want to be. So in this sense, awareness exercises are very, very important. So the idea is very easy, like 4 times a day. Set an alarm on your cellular phone, mobile phone, random alarms. Maybe once or twice in the morning, once in the afternoon, one in the evening, without even, thinking too much about when exactly should I set the alarm. And when you hear the alarm, you stop whatever activity you're doing and you take 3 deep breaths and you ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? What am I feeling right now? Am I angry? Am I contracted? Am I relaxed? Am I worried? Am I happy? What am I feeling? And the next question, this question is already enough, but if you want to go deeper, you may ask yourself, what do I need? I need to be reassured. I need some rest. I need some more information. I need to make a decision. What do I need? So it's a very, very simple but very powerful.
And if people continue to practice this, what will they benefit? What changes will people start to observe?
Well, they will start to be, as I said, be more aware of where they are, what they need, and where they want to go in terms of, goals in their private life, professional life. They will feel less stressed, because we talk a lot about stress, in our society, but stress actually is fear. Fear of not having enough time, not having enough information, not being good enough, it's fear. Most illness are stress-related illness. Most problems in relationships at work or at home come because of stress. When we are stressed, we react to people. Actually, we are not at our best. We are at our worst. Right. So by doing this exercise, already the 3 breaths, when we take some deep breathing, what happens is that we start releasing endorphins, which are antagonists of cortisol and adrenaline, which are the neurotransmitters at the base of stress. So already the 3 breaths stimulated the parasympathetic system, which is the relaxation system, bring more oxygen to our brain. And so we make some smarter decisions. And just with the breathing, plus with the question, we become more aware of what we need in that precise moment.
I love that. I had actually not too long ago, I think 2 weeks ago, I read a Japanese study that 6 breaths dramatically increases endorphins. And so I hadn't heard about 3 breaths, but I just saw a study that they did on 6, which was like dramatic improvement in all the ways that you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And if people can do 6 instead of 3, even better. But
right. When it comes to breathing, more is better.
Yeah, exactly. But lots of people say, well, what if the alarm goes off in a meeting? I cannot, but 3 breaths, it's easy. Maybe 6 breaths, they would be, feel awkward to start breathing in front of, their colleagues. But 3 breaths, you can even do it without anyone noticing. So,
Totally. That's a really, really good assignment. And I encourage everyone to try that out. And I wanted to ask you, what are some of the other things that you do for yourself to optimize your performance? What are kind of your daily routines for ensuring that you're at your best?
Yeah, well, I do breathing exercises as soon as I wake up in the morning, 6-7 minutes, but I feel a lot of energy from it, energy and focus. And then I do another 7 minutes of meditation, very simple meditation. I either meditate on a mantra or I meditate on my breath again. And then I do yoga, and I try to do yoga almost every day. Of course, that doesn't happen if I'm traveling, but sometimes I did some yoga position on the plane.
Wow.
so or at the airport. So, because I really think that we sit too much. And the more we sit, the more we develop mental, exhaustion and mental energy that needs to be some way released. And if we don't release it through our physical activity, then our mind goes crazy, and our monkey mind starts jumping from one side to the other. And then the body doesn't move, but the mind starts moving so quickly, but not in a positive way.
Right.
Yeah. And so I try to do yoga every day, or walks every day, or when I'm in my home in Thailand, I go swimming, some kind of gentle activity. And then the other thing I do is I'm vegan, and since many, many years. And even if I didn't start that for health reasons, because I started that I started actually being vegetarian when I was 9 years old, against all my parents, very worried. But then probably 15 years ago, I turned vegan. And for many years, I also was raw vegan, which meant only raw food. Now I'm like 60% raw and 30%, 40% I eat also cooked food. But I think that veganism also, having a plant-based diet helps me tremendously with my energy, with my focus. So, yeah.
I love all of those. Those are wonderful. And I'm so passionate right now about finding a vacation home to work from. So I guess it's not a vacation home, but I love that you mentioned you have a retreat place in Thailand.
Yes, and one in Bali as well.
Tell me more about that. How did you find these places? And tell me more.
Yeah, well, so actually I started going to Thailand 15 years ago. And I just happened to be there for a short vacation, and I loved it. And so I decided I need to spend more time here. So I started giving workshops there and retreats there. And I still give once a year, 8 days long retreat in Thailand, every end of February, beginning of March. And I spend like 4 or 5 months a year in Thailand. So I bought a house there, and it's actually like 5 minutes from 8 kilometers pristine beach, and it's beautiful. And then I started going to Bali as well, and it's beautiful also. And in Bali, I live in Ubud, and Ubud is the spiritual center of Bali. And so again, at the beginning, I started going to Bali just to, know more of that culture. And then it's so fascinating, the spirituality, the living spirituality that is there. So again, I decided, why not spend more time here? And I spent 2-3 months a year in Bali, in Ubud, and I also lead a retreat there in August. Wow. So, and retreats there, both Thailand and Bali, are called spirituality, vitality, well-being, because that's actually what we work on these 3 elements. So, and when I'm not working, meaning when I'm not leading retreats, I write my books there. And I do my online courses from there.
Wow. I admire that so much. I've been racking my brain trying to find, I really have a craving for a lake house with a forest behind it. And of course, in Israel, that's a non-existent thing. We don't have lakes, and we only have man-made forests. We have lots of desert, beautiful desert, and beautiful beach. But I really admire that. And I've been more and more thinking about just having a retreat, not so much to get away, but to get my best thinking done. I think since I read Cal Newport's Deep Work, it really changed the way I think about getting out of town, and that actually getting out of town can be your most productive time.
Yeah, definitely. For me, it is. For me, it's definitely my most productive time. And also my 2 houses, both in Bali and in Thailand, my house in Thailand is in a forest. And in Bali is in among the rice fields and the forest. So, yeah.
Wow. Well, you have definitely inspired me to invest more time in looking. I don't know where I'm going to begin, but if anyone in the audience knows of a lake house, 3 to 4 hours flight from Tel Aviv, do let me know. Lucia, I know we're running out of time, so I want to ask you a few more questions. First, rapid fire, what are a few books that have changed your life?
Let me think. First of all, Bhagavad Gita by Ram Dass. So the Bhagavad Gita is a beautiful, beautiful book, except that the traditional Bhagavad Gita is quite difficult to understand. But Ram Dass, the spiritual teacher from the 70s, made a fantastic version of it because of his explanation. His explanation that helped people to use the Bhagavad Gita teaching for everyday life. So I highly recommend it. And then another one was Autobiography of a Yogi by Yogananda. Again, I love Yogananda so much as a spiritual teacher. So again, a beautiful, beautiful book. And then Stealing Fire by Stephen Kotler. It's very interesting because he talks about, he spent 4 years investigating techniques and applications and inspirations that altered states provide. So it's all about, altered states. I know it's a controversial, matter, but it's very interesting.
Right. Yeah, we had Stephen on the show, and it was one of the more interesting episodes, I think, just talking about flow and how to get there.
Exactly. Because people think about altered state, maybe like to get away from reality. Instead, it can bring you more into reality. Of course, it depends, on your intention and on how you do it.
Absolutely. Last couple questions here, Lucia. What's one thing that you believe that other people think is crazy?
I believe one day slaughterhouses will be closed because people will realize it's really, I don't know, I don't like to use this word, but there is not another word that comes to mind that is better. So that's a sin towards living sentient beings, And so I know, for many people it's crazy, but one of my goals is to make it so that we don't harm animals so much.
I love that. And I've always said I'll be the first person in line when 3D printed steaks and lab grown meat is widely available.
Exactly. And they are working on that.
Oh, they are. Yeah, we're not that far away from having tasty lab grown meat.
Yes.
Lucia, your book is coming out in March. I want to make sure to give people an opportunity to connect with you and learn more about you and your book. Where should we send people?
To my website, luciagiovannini.com, which is my name.com. And then also I recently opened a very nice community on Facebook called A Whole New Life. And it's a community really to support people who are going through a change in their life or who want to create a change in their life. A Whole New Life in Facebook or luciagiovannini.com.
Wonderful. And we'll put all those links for folks in the podcast episode at superhuman.blog. Make sure to go out and check out A Whole New Life, published by Hay House and coming out in the US in March of 2019.
Yeah, actually in the US, it's going to be published by Post Hills Press. Hay House, it was published in India.
Perfect. Lucia, I want to thank you for spending your time with us today. But before I do that, I want to ask you if there is one thing that you hope people take away from this episode and carry with them for the rest of their lives, what would you hope for that thing to be?
Well, I often hear people say, I want to change the world. And I myself often have this impulse. And I've had it forever, since I was a child. And it's a noble proposition that can, however, lead to frustration at times. So the idea is, by whom is the world composed? It's made of nations, cities, blocks, families, office, groups of people. So what I'd like people to take with them is that every one of us has an impact on the world, whether we are aware of that or not. So when we decide to follow our dream and improve ourselves, we become an example for others and we can actually change the world.
Wow. I really love that. Lucia, I want to thank you so much for, again, spending your time with us today. I really, really appreciate it. I certainly learned a lot, and I know our audience did as well.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. It's been such a pleasure to be with you.
Pleasure was all mine. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, super friends, that is all we have for you today, but I hope you guys really enjoyed the show and I hope you learned a ton of actionable information, tips, advice that will help you go out there and overcome the impossible. If you've enjoyed the show, please take a moment to leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher or drop us a quick little note on the Twitter machine at GoSuperhuman. Also, if you have any ideas for anyone out there who you would love to see on the show, we always love to hear your recommendations. You can submit on our website or you can just drop us an email and let us know. That's all for today, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in to the Becoming Superhuman podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit www.becomingasuperhuman.com/podcast. We'll see you next time.